how does process play a critical role in the success of your business? Our special guest today will share some of his tips on how to accelerate your business by reducing processing around people problems and producing consistently positive results even when you are not there. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe you must remove your revenue roadblocks if you want to accelerate growth, and that marketing shouldn't be difficult. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I am super excited to have with me Alan Edwards from Eureka Process. Alan, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yes, I am looking forward to this, man. It's process is not something that we talk about all that often, but as you well know, super, super important part of any successful business. So before we jump into that, though, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions to help people get to know you a little bit. You ready to jump in with both feet?
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Believe it or not, there's actually a lot of work that I enjoy, which is probably why I now own 3 businesses. Continually applying process. I have an IT recruiting company. I'm actually just in the middle of opening up a cafe and nightclub with my wife and a business partner. But aside from that, I do enjoy running, scuba, skiing, mountain biking, and video games.
Okay, man, that's a lot. What's your hidden talent?
I tend to enjoy new experiences, so I don't really think I'm hiding any talents. But if you haven't hung out with me enough to get to know me, people are shocked to find out that I've done ballet, musical theater, acting, both film and stage, and some writing.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best ranking is always so hard for me.
I know.
But I am frequently reminding all of my cohorts in the business world that the purpose of business is not to make money. The purpose of business is to fill a need, and money is the byproduct from delivering that value.
Yeah. I love that. Helps us focus on the important part of it, right? Because if we're too focused on the money, it can end up coming across that way, which is not it's just not a good thing.
Absolutely, and I've been guilty of that for the first half of my career before I could really turn that perspective.
Yeah. What's one thing about you that surprises people?
Not to open a can of worms, but just 6 years ago, I was actually homeless and hungry. And that is living on the streets of Mexico, and it is also where I gave birth to Eureka Process and met my wife.
Okay, we could definitely go down that rabbit hole. That's crazy. But you know what? One, congratulations for coming this far.
Thank you.
2, I think it also goes to show people how quickly things can change. I mean, because I don't know. I mean, 6 years may have felt super long to you, but 6 years in the realm of all our life span is not a long period of time.
Yeah.
What does success mean to you?
You gave me a heads up with this question. I actually spent some quite a bit of time thinking about this, and I think I came up with having fun while producing something for society, and that can be anywhere from art to filling that business need to making people happy.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good one, man. Nobody has ever said they defined it that way, so I love it. Where's your happy place?
Well, I am typically always happy. I do find like long showers, or especially mountain biking, a very meditative state for me, and I do tend to come out of that even more positive afterwards.
Do you I interviewed somebody a while ago who was a long distance runner and he listened to God, I can't even remember what it was. It was a specific type of music. It wasn't trance music, but it was like that, where it was like the beat, and it helped him just stay on pace.
Right.
Do you do anything like that when you mountain bike? I mountain bike and I don't do that, but
I specifically can't afford distractions when I mountain bike. But what I like about it is my entire focus is on not dying, and I'm not that advanced, and I don't ride that hard.
Yeah.
But I like my job, and I like being able to do it. So I want to stay healthy. I'm so focused on one task that has nothing to do with all my other worries.
Yeah.
And that's what I find refreshing is afterwards I have that physical tiredness, but my mind is like, oh, I'm free to think about things again. And
Yeah.
it's very refreshing.
Yeah. It takes I don't listen to music because you can't hear anybody else coming on the trail. But it's, one of the things I love about mountain biking that's relevant to businesses. They always talk about, when you're mountain biking, you need to focus on where you want to go, not where you don't want to go. Because
I
if you're
use,
focusing on the edge of the turn, that's exactly where you're going to go.
yeah,
Um,
I use
so
that and the exact example of several of my accidents in every single strategic session I do with our clients. I've boiled it down to envision success, don't envision failure.
yeah,
Uh, Whichever one you see is what'll happen.
yeah, yeah, I love it. What qualities do you value in the people you spend time with?
I narrowed it down to four: honest, direct, driven, and the fourth one's the kicker. Is they have to like me back.
That's a good one. uh, yeah, that's always good in a relationship, right?
I usually just have the last one. I had to get better at that.
Yeah. Alan, tell us more about what you're doing with Eureka Process. What types of people are you working with?
Right, yeah. So we are a traditional business consultant. However, we focus exclusively on IT service providers because I've been there, done that. Most of our team has been there, done that, and we focus on all three layers of the business: strategic, logistics, and tactics. So strategic could be building your identity, direction, and objectives. The logistics could be meeting with you weekly to develop your processes in all the key areas of your business, from finance to service delivery, and even down to the tactics of executing within your business, changing your PSAs, your documentation platforms, etc.
So you're helping ensure that they're running a tight ship.
Yeah, and they know the tech. I mean, I kind of know
Yeah.
tech. I'm recovering,
Yeah.
but we want to bring them back to basics about what is it to own a business and how do you grow and scale a business with all these people, which are weird parts of the equation.
Yeah. Well, and, it's in the IT space, in the managed service provider space, like you said, they tend to be very technical people. They started their business because they love the tech,
Hmm.
but they don't necessarily always have that business background. And you know, like a lot of us who start our own businesses, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, and most of our prospects come to us, and the words I hear are tired of babysitting these morons, which is, it's a true feeling. It might not be the truth of the matter. And I just, don't like going to work anymore. And that's where those skill sets that they started with are no longer fitting the scale they're at now in their business.
So let's dig into it. Let's talk process. You have a published book. What's the name of the book?
Process and the other P word, which
And
is
the other P
author
word.
process.
Okay, I love it. How did you decide on such a niche and specific topic?
Well, 4 years ago, I wrote a much larger book that I sent to the publisher, and her words were great content that might have been this making me feel better, but it had no structure. So I spent the next few years realizing that my business had no structure, and I worked through that. And then I found out that 80% of our clients have the same starting point. No matter what we discuss, we have to develop a process based culture, or we can't make changes to processes that don't exist. We can't set clear expectations with employees that don't exist. So we always start with how do we start building a process based culture? And that's why I chose this topic of the book.
And it's how do you relate? Is process similar to systems? Are they interchangeable? How do you think about it in that regard?
They're definitely in a Venn diagram. There'd be a lot of overlap there.
Yeah.
It's more about perspective. For example, when I wrote the book, I had to define three words very carefully for myself to stay on topic. One is what is a process, and a process is any series of steps to accomplish a particular task. In our case, for a positive outcome of that task. And then I had to redefine documentation because I use documentation and process almost interchangeably. But to me,
Yeah.
documentation is simply the writing down in an accessible place of the decisions you have made. And that is what a written process is, that we have decided as a company to do things this way.
Yeah.
And what brings them all together is what the word culture means. And I was surprised how clear the definition was once I actually read it for the first time in my life just a few years ago. A culture is just a collection of habits of a group of people. So if our group of people, our business, our teammates follow the written process, then that is our culture. And if we don't set that clear expectations, our culture is usually quite unknown or not what we expect.
Well, and I would think when you have documented processes, it eliminates a lot of confusion,
Mhm.
questions people might have, and it helps you get to an end result more consistently.
Correct. And the wild west of all these problems that we're having as a scale business is people.
Yeah.
And usually the problem with people isn't the people themselves; it's our inability to set clear expectations. I actually liken this to a disease called LBS. I don't know if you've heard of it. Uh, Leaky bucket syndrome.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
we tell somebody how to do something and they retain 80% of that information. And then as we grow and they might teach the next person, they're already starting with an 80% bucket that's continuing to leak. And they fill the next person's bucket. Now it's down to 60%. And as that tribal knowledge continues to
Yes.
dilute, it's missing. And the only way to prevent that is to have written, clear expectations, processes, and KPIs. And there's some other techniques to continually fill that bucket because we're human and we can't actually plug the leaks. All we can do is continually fill the bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm working with a client right now. With their marketing, we're evaluating where they're at and then putting a plan together. And one of the things that is really coming to the surface in the intake and discovery process is exactly what you just talked about. They have a ton of tribal knowledge and not a lot of documented processes, and so their sales process, they're just kind of winging it.
Mhm.
Some of their marketing stuff, it's like, oh, let's do this, and they kind of go down this path, but there's just no real thought behind it and a set process that anybody can follow. And things have gotten very unwieldy. If
Uh, Even for, I mean, there are certainly limits to when process benefits you and don't benefit you. It's not for necessarily for one man shows, but even when I was a one person show, if I had one process that I only did every so often, such as sales or invoicing, for example, I found it far easier to write those key bullet points of what is it that I'm doing so that I was consistent and didn't have
Yeah,
to rethink through it every time. And it actually reduced my own time spent.
yeah. Well, you touched on this. I'm curious what you think of this. You said the key points, right? The key steps. Um, Somebody said to me a while ago, they were like, you write process and systems for smart people. Like you don't have to have all 80 steps that somebody needs to take, right?
Yeah.
Um, we got to write these for smart people. And if they can't follow them, then they're probably not the right people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, that is really well said. So many times we are processing around a people problem. And because you have a people problem, no amount of process is going to fix that. Uh, and one of the ways that I approach this is one, if you feel the need to do step by step screenshots or whatever, it's your prerogative to do so. But I don't call that a process. That's a training document.
Yeah.
And you can do training and you can train people, and that's great. But who's going to want to follow an 18-page process every day?
Yeah.
Once they know it, give them the key points to remember the order of operations to get it done at. Uh, yeah, so we're working with a bunch of really smart people in IT, and we tend to understand complex issues much more easily than the average. So many times as a business owner, our expectations of people are also really, really high and not always fair.
Yeah. Got it. So you said, well, a lot of times we're processing around people problems, which leads into my next question, which I think a lot of us struggle with. If we got a people problem, like how do we know it's time to actually let somebody go?
Uh, the short answer is if you're thinking it, it's probably time.
Yeah.
Uh, However, as human beings, I feel like we owe it to our fellow human being to be as clear as possible with our expectations, hence process KPIs. Uh, Also, we have a fear of conflict, so we want to give them opportunities. So what I've done is I have a coaching system we teach to our clients, and it's essentially an escalation system. But the idea is you're tracking what's going on, what the problems are, and you start off with coaching and reminders, and it might move toward probation and ultimately termination. So you have some sort of documentation for that. But the key really is that there's only two ways to have an infraction, which is failure to follow process or failure to live up to core values, which are the ultimate process. And if there's only two ways, it becomes a much more simple conversation to have. And if somebody comes to you like, oh, we didn't have a process for that, and I didn't break any core values, therefore the solution is, oh, let's develop a process together. It's no longer a negative experience. It's just filling a gap together. It's teamwork.
So I like this, man. It's simple. And so it's the measuring stick is failure to follow process or failure to uphold core values. So we obviously need to communicate our core values consistently and on a regular basis. And we also obviously have to have documented processes. But if we do, then it just becomes this system where it's like, hey, is it a 3 strikes you're out kind of thing? Or how do you, is that loose? What do you guys do?
This is where I'll confess that there's some art to this.
Yeah.
There's science.
It's not all science.
Yeah. Like my process is kind of like 7 strikes and you're out.
Okay.
We start very much on re-education, coaching, and training first. And then there's times to make exceptions. But you also have to, I wrote in the book a couple of questions to test. Is now a time to make an exception? Has it happened before? Or has the same thing happened before? Have you given this person exceptions before? So that there's times to bend, but it can't be unlimited, right? You bend that rule once. Remember, they have 7 strikes, so there's plenty of room. There's nothing wrong with needing to be reminded of a process or recoaching it again. It's just part of the process. But by the time you've done this enough times, this is beginning to eat up your time and possibly rot your team at the core.
Right.
And it's really time to start thinking about it. And some encouragement, if you're thinking, I hate the word termination, but if you're thinking about it for somebody, whenever we start enforcing these things, I have an 80-10-10 rule. 80% of your people are going to act right. 10% in the far right are not. And depending on how you deal with them, you have 10% in the middle are going to go whichever way you enforce.
Yeah, whether you think it or not, it's kind of like our kids. They're always watching us. They're always paying attention. Yeah. And man, if you let people slide, then that 10% that you're talking about, they go that other direction that you don't want them to go.
And as talking heads, right, we have to say things that are a little bit sensational to get our audience to be motivated and to think and to act, which is the hard part. So when you're firm enough to say termination's a real possibility, you also end up saving a lot more jobs. It gets bad, though, when you never quite get to that step. The next thing you know, 3 people are like that. Now it's 5 people are like that. And now you have a real problem on your hands.
Yeah. Well, the thing I love about how you're describing this process, Alan, is one, it's much easier for us to be objective on something that can usually be very subjective. But 2, by the time a team member or employee gets to the point where they're going to be fired or terminated, it's not a surprise.
The number one excuse I've heard for not doing it is, they're producing too much work, we can't live without them. And I've heard it almost every time. I'm just going to point blank, and I'm sure there's exceptions, say it's BS, because I have never once in my life seen somebody regret pulling the trigger. And almost every time they're like, wow, I wish I would have done that sooner. Because it's amazing how much work they were causing or actually not getting done when you just thought they were.
I have had, not in my current business, but in prior businesses, I can attest to that. I mean, I have had people that were on the team that it was just like a cancer. And the minute they were gone, I mean, no joke, like within days, the atmosphere, the environment, the culture shifted completely. So anybody that's watching or listening to this, like if you're in that place, do not question it. It is something that you have to do. And just do it.
Just do it. Nice
Yeah,
like that.
just do it. I love it. So what other examples do you have? I love the example of, putting in process for coaching and guiding people so that when you do have to fire people, it's an easier process. I don't know if I'd ever say it's easy, but what other examples do you have? Any other advice that seems to come up consistently?
So, as a coach and a speaker, I do try coming up with all sorts of sayings because it helps people understand the concepts. And I had to sort through this whole Teams channel we have called SHIT Allen Says. Uh, and I came up with this one, which I think I stole from a Robert Kiyosaki book, one of his early ones in the 90s, which is that FOCUS is an acronym for finish one course until successful.
Yeah.
And I think especially with us smart IT people, we tend to try to do so many things and we need to do one. And a quote that I give for myself is you can't have everything, but you can have one thing. Keep it up long enough and you can have everything. So by focusing on the smaller, simpler piece, you can get everything done. But if you focus on everything, you're just constantly juggling.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you, if somebody is listening to this and they're like, gosh, my business doesn't have a lot of process, where's usually the best place to start? I mean, do you find that you're starting with the same process with most clients, or what does that look like?
Yes, I do find we're starting the same process. And if we're talking about teams of people, let's say 5 people or more,
Yeah.
probably the first process I would write is lovingly called the process, which is far better when I was calling it the procedure with AmiPro back in the 2000s. And essentially what the process is a blueprint to your documentation system. It covers the who, what, when, where, why, how of documentation. We even have a template for it at theeurekacommunity.com where just, copy, paste this into your documentation platform and make a couple of key decisions. Who's in charge? When do you document? Is it separate or is it at the time of doing work? Where are you storing your documents? How do you write them? How do you title them? Go ahead and answer those questions so everybody's clear and it becomes very easy to create more documentation.
It seems super obvious that that's where you start with process. But my guess is 98% of us would totally overlook that. I know I would. But it's just a fundamental thing, right? We're documenting how we actually process within the company.
Faith in marketing was coming up with some ideas for some marketing for us. And she was like, oh, we're innovative. I'm like, well, what we do really is the opposite of innovation. We're trying to bring people back to the basics, things that people know they should do, but have difficulty actually executing, and they're missing it. And it's what's causing their business to be more difficult to scale.
Yeah.
So we're giving the advice your grandmother would give if she was an entrepreneur.
One of the things too that I have heard, I'm curious how you feel about this. Once you put processes in place, I've heard multiple people say that the person that should own that process and make updates to it is the one that's actually doing it day in, day out, which makes sense to me. How do you feel about that?
I mostly agree. I do believe that decision is on a maturity scale. I think in earlier maturities, I'll pick a number, let's say 25 to 50 people in your organization. You should probably be updating your SOPs live. Let everybody have access to it. Most documentation platforms have rollback plans, edit traces and histories on what's going on. And I would use that to your advantage. As you scale more, you might have more and more people who are removed from the impact, and it could make sense to have a change management process.
Okay.
And sometimes it's depends on what it is, like maybe company policies. I let everybody have access to them right now, but as we grow beyond 10, 20 people, it might make sense that company policies are a change management process and the rest are open. and then you continue to lock those down as you grow. But definitely don't add too many barriers earlier on.
Do you have any recommendations for systems to house all this stuff? Like, do I need something specific, or can I use, Google Drive and have all this stuff live in Google Docs? What are your thoughts there?
The classic consulting answer is, right, is it depends. I could tell you that I've used specific built brands like IT Glue and Hoodoo, IT Boost, and some others. I think they're all pretty darn good. Anytime I see somebody switching from one to the other, I'm like, why waste your time? Do you have the process? Are you following the systems? Because I find the systems are pretty similar once you do that. At the same time, I just had the benefit of taking over the support department for Gozenta Inc., who purchased Eureka Process back in May.
Okay.
And they're using Confluence. And it's not quite mission built for IT, but I'm finding it extremely enjoyable to apply the exact same principles that I teach to our clients and in the book to Confluence. And I've seen it done in Google Share Drives, SharePoint, OneNote. They're all okay systems if you're clear in your process, that blueprints, everybody can do it.
Okay. And did you say that you have the process is available on your website?
I have it at the eurekacommunity.com, which is a members only website.
Okay.
Tim, if you want to hit me up and offer this, I think we can get you a template to your listeners.
Okay, cool. That would be awesome, man. I'll hit you up and we'll make sure that goes
Awesome.
in the show notes. Because I'm assuming that can be applied to all kinds of different businesses.
Yes. Again, I just had a chance to apply it to a software as a service company, still technical, and in opening up this bar and cafe, I'm kind of hoping to see if the same thing applies.
Yeah, cool. I love it, man. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that, because I think, if you're not a process type person, it's really hard to start putting processes into your business. But I don't know about you. I've never met anybody that was ever able to get off the treadmill of their business or sell their business if they did not have really strong process.
100% agree. Even in my first IT firm, we didn't get large or anything, but I could take a month off.
Yeah.
And it was okay. And that was thanks to being a very process oriented company.
Yeah. This has been great, man. Any last minute thoughts you want to share with us about process or anything else?
Just to throw a few things that we barely touched on.
Sure.
I encourage everybody to keep it simple. A header in a documentation platform is better than no document at all. And 5 bullet points is better than no bullet points. And that's a great start. It's much easier to correct somebody, just ask my wife, than it is to create something from scratch, right? And then as you're building your culture out, that to build that culture, always refer back to what's in writing. And if it's missing, fix it. Don't refer back to what I said or as per my email, but what's in writing in your documentation system.
That's awesome, man. Keep it simple. Keep it simple resonates with me because I talk about that all the time on the marketing side. But in our life, in our professional careers, like, man, it's so easy to overcomplicate things, and complexity just gets in the way of implementation and seeing results. So keep it simple, people. We will make sure that we get that process in the show notes. Alan, where can people connect with you, man?
Easiest way is eurekaprocess.com. But if you see myself or a business posting on Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, feel free to say hi, add a friend request, find me on LinkedIn. Glad to connect with you.
Awesome. Alan, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. Please connect with Alan. If you got process issues, reach out, connect with them. At the very least, if you're not an ideal client, I'm sure you can point people in the right direction. Yes.
Glad to help, and thanks for having me.
I love it. Alan, thank you, man. Those of you watching, listening, I appreciate you and thank you for doing so. Process, gotta have it. On the marketing side, you gotta process, and consistency is so important for long-term success. If you want to know which of the 9 revenue roadblocks are in your way, slowing down your growth, you can do that over at revenueroadblockscorecard.com. Takes less than 5 minutes to get your customized report. You can also always connect with us over at rialtomarketing.com. That's over at RIALTO marketing.com. Alan, thank you. Audience, thank you. Till next time, take care.